Space are currently tied 1-1 so far in this best of 5 series, our first best of 5 series of part 2.
Sometimes when you come up with those and I don't get to hear them beforehand, I just think they're so clever that I don't come up with something clever to respond with. Like, I'm just sitting here more in awe, and I'm just like, I wish I could be as clever as you.
Who knew?
Between lag and space.
Astronauts versus lag, who will win? Who knows?
In the end, let's be real, lag always wins. Like, when it's present, there are no victors but lag.
That is a good point. We'll have to keep that in mind.
Especially if you're in space. That's like the last place I want lag. Like, that's probably a life or death problem, Gilly. We should be concerned about this.
Yeah, maybe a submarine, but I don't know why you would have lag on a submarine the way that you would in space.
Pretty much just anywhere that isn't home. I want the internet.
I also don't want lag at home either.
I mean,
let's send it to the astronauts instead. I'm sure it's fine. Battleground number 3 is ready. And we're going to Towers of Doom.
Towers of Doom. Force Space Station Gaming being the first map that they have selected makes a bit more sense. And after the last game, they looked a bit, angry with that 10-minute Dragonshire win. So I'm expecting a dominant game coming out from them here as well. But the thing we have to be focusing on, Abathur, Zagara, and I'm going to drop Dahaka. Those are the... Actually, now even Illidan, like, where does that come online? We have seen him paid attention to in the drafts between these two teams, but it hasn't been near the priority of Western and Eastern Clash.
Abathur, I did the Zagara. I was like, wait, why are you mentioning Zagara? But that's right, we had one in game number 1. I think Abathur Genji, too. I don't think just because they lost once with him that Lag Force are ready to not get Genji if they could get their hands on him. Yeah,
Genji's a terrifying hero, and doubling down on that one, having double Genji is even more terrifying. It's not one of those 1 + 1 = 2. It's about a 54 in terms of the terror scales here. Lag Force first ban. Because of this, what do we expect? I would, not the Tassadar, not what I assumed coming out from them. I thought we would see more like the Abathur ban, and then a Force coming out elsewhere, because it's unlikely you're going to see both picked up. So where does Lag Force go for first pick? There it is.
I am so surprised that this wasn't Genji. Like, I've got Abathur. Lots of different heroes that they can pair with that, though, besides the Genji. I would be surprised, Red, to see teams give tasks to Space Station unless they are just, they want them to go into Task Tracer because they have some sort of plan against that, especially maybe on a different battleground, like something else where it's not as scary as the Task Tracer, although I said the Space Station will run it anywhere, but definitely not down Towers of Doom.
Genji Dahaka makes a lot of sense considering the Abathur picked up. I felt honestly a little bit surprised it took that long to be picked up, because when you take away the Abathur, you want to remove the Genji 100% because you don't want double Genji going onto the other side of the table. And then you have the Dahaka to make up for the global, and the only counter response to this left for Lag Force, traditionally taking metas we learned from the Western and Eastern Clash, is Illidan. Because then you have the Illidan hat, which will dominate over the Dahaka and make the teamfight less presentable for Space Station Gaming. But I feel like it's not nearly as likely we see Lag Force commit to that here into the draft. I wouldn't be surprised, but I feel like they're going to focus on another heavy wave clear hero, because in all games they've had that one guy who is known for focusing on wave clear. Zag in one game, Gul'dan in the next, and I expect another one here for them in this game.
What about taking or banning Rhaegar or Uther and then banning the other?
I mean, I would suggest the Uther if we're going that direction, right? If you go into the Illidan, I don't mind taking the Rhaegar on top of that and then banning out the Uther into your secondary ban, but you have to ban out that Uther. Greymane, high priority, not surprising considering the Abathur. That's a synergy. The other heroes we were talking about that we can work with, and then the Rhaegar.
We'll see if Uther's the ban for Lag Force to try to take away some of the ways of keeping Genji safe in fights. What does Space Station want to take away? They have the Dahaka, but that's as a response for Abathur. The global damage has already been done, and Lag do have that.
I mean, the biggest thing for them is get what they consider objectively powerful or a direct counter to the other side, but there aren't any direct counters. There hasn't been a lot shown on the side of Lag Force in terms of their overall composition and how it's going to be played. The only things you do know is that they're obviously going to have a double Greymane team fighting you and applying pressure, and Abathur is going to be a problem in the later stages. The Uther ban out, we talked about that with the Rhaegar picked up for Lag Force. Very smart to be able to rid themselves of that. It's going to make a lot more pressure on Tiger JK in this game.
Are you surprised to see an Arthas ban for Space Station? They have
Oh,
been heavily playing him quite a bit, and he is a counter to Illidan, who we thought would be maybe a pick for Lag F.
It is a bit interesting, which suddenly means they're going Illidan all-in style composition, but with a Rhaegar on the other side of the table, that is not a support. You typically want that dive-heavy composition.
And Space Station don't play Illidan. It did not play him until their match versus Even in Death. It's not been a favored pick for them at all.
So then into an Illidan, you can make the argument that Li Ming is a bit one of the better targets to make sure you get that blow up on top of him. But, you know, I like to build a counter argument to anybody with that. It's more of a skill matchup. Li Ming is not a counter because she does magic damage. She also does skill shots. And she also needs to be far away from the Illidan to be effective with 1/3 of her kit. And so suddenly it makes it a lot more, it's not as clear in the long run. She can hold her own better than most in a 1v1, but it's not nearly as lopsided as you'd assume knowing she's full magic damage. So do they commit? Do we see like a Tyrael Illidan come out all in Deathball composition?
I think it comes down to B-Kid. We talked about it. We haven't seen him play this role except one match. He did continue with the role at Bloodlust, but it was mainly Malthael and Dahaka were the two that we saw him have comfort with. Dahaka, not available. Space Station took it. Do they get Malthael here? Do they get an Illidan? He's since played Zagara. He's since had other options. Maybe he's playing the Abathur here. We'll see with these last two picks.
The Malthael. Not what I expected from them, but it's going to continue a trend, you know, as you said, from the past that they have over. It just now, I feel like there is a lot of counterplay for Space Station Gaming and how they can take the, you know, earlier stages of the game, but more importantly, play out the mid game. Abathur is going to be applying a lot less pressure, and they're very heroic dependent. And not the Anubarak so much, but mainly Ancestral Healing and Abathur Malthael. So I would have liked to see maybe some focus into a form of disengage. Not sure what I want off the top of my head. Maybe Brightwing here for Space Station Gaming. Because once Clone and Malthael comes out, if you just avoid the fight at all costs, you win the next one 100% within 100 seconds. So you can either say Lag Force, either you don't get anything on the map for 100 seconds, or you have to team fight us and we're most likely going to come out on top.
But Space Station at the same time, they also want to fight with their Li Ming and Genji.
Oh yeah. I mean, they have a lot of skirmish-oriented tools. It's not that they're unable to. It's just when you do have those opponents, you always want to abuse the easiest thing, the one you can rely on, the thing you can depend on, which is, I mean, you flat out can't outplay cooldown timers. You know, I mean, they're always going to be 100 seconds. So it just makes, I think it's safer overall. But I don't mind the direction Space Station went. I feel it's more Space Station Gaming-y, if you will.
Esque.
Essence
of the Space Station. Yeah, with Genji, Dahaka, Space Station have a lot of mobility. They have the global of Dahaka, and importantly, they're up against an Abathur composition, so they will ideally be able to get a lot done earlier on before that Abathur gains steam.
Yeah, I think that's got to be the overall game plan, right? Because the late game, you do not want to deal with Malthael. He can become a major problem, especially post-20, some of the heroic choices he has going on for him. A lot of it is just when Abathur and Malthael press R, is the team fight actually happening? And if the members of Space Station can run away, this game could be really easy for them to take. But if they can't get away, suddenly Lag Force, I'm just like, well, what do you do? How do you deal with this? How do you answer to this other than levels 1 through 9? Should fall off a little bit.
Well, let's see how it works out and who will get a lead in this best of 5 series. We're headed to Towers of Doom for game number 3.
Still Abathur, though, for Lag Force. As you talked about, you thought it was going to be the Genji first pick over the Abathur, but it does seem like Lag Force, with the role swap, they are more focused and more attentive towards the minion wave, the experience, the macro global game, than they have been of at least part number 1, or phase number 1, excuse me.
And I will repeat what I said before, and that is before that has not worked out for Lag Force. Doesn't mean that it's not here. They are playing very well in this series, and they have played it especially well in game number 1. My fear is just that if they start playing this style that doesn't play to their own strengths, they are incredible in team fights. They have always been a force to be reckoned with in team fights, but it's almost like they hinder themselves when in the past they have played a more macro style. But I am hopeful because you and I have been talking all year about when does the Navintic of old return, and maybe it's the name swap that does it.
Maybe it's the name swap, but this is a big collapse for Space Station. The drag does end up landing there onto Tomskir, but with the Abathur, he's going to be just fine. Equinox now getting the chase with B-Kid, keeping that Dot right on top of him. He's not going to be able to make it out here. Look at just Lag F is just ripping through Space Station Gaming here.
Man, I've never seen that many Reaper's Marks be applied without Tormented Souls in my life. The claps came in from Space Station, but it was Lag F that reigned supreme in that team fight.
Very well done there from them. And when looking at B-Kid onto that Malthael, the biggest thing is going to be how effective is he spreading it outside of the heroic choice. I talked about him being so R-focused, but you know, if you get enough auto attacks the same way he was just able to, suddenly you aren't so dependent onto your heroic. It's just, can we see that same thing unfold that we experienced in that skirmish translate over to a major team fight?
Yeah, and I wonder if even because of that, we'll see a throwing shade at level 4 so that he is able to have more of an uptime with that. But man, Lag F aren't letting up. They take out Muradin for yet another kill. And again, this is the Abathur team. Yeah,
the chain CC and totem slows coming out between Tomster and Zuna have just been too hard for a lot of the members to be able to deal with. Equinox has constantly found himself dwarf tossing in and finding himself going like, you know, maybe that wasn't the direction we really wanted to set ourselves into. Both the Zappers are going to be picked up like clockwork, as always here in North America. But it's the triple altar that we have to be focused on. Space Station may not even be able to get the 4 talent here before at least one of the altars is captured.
Dread, we haven't mentioned yet, but Equinox is playing Muradin. Casanova's on Genji.
I'll be honest, I saw Equinox and Muradin and thought that wasn't weird, but I never noticed that that was Casanova on Genji. I did not. Okay, so this is... All right, hold on a minute. We're going to worry about this bottom altar, but then I'm going to go a little bit into that, because that is really not that strange, but it is a big thing for Space Station to see them fluctuate like this.
Cocktail stops Tiger JK once the fight comes in. Casanova swift strikes in, uses the deflect for a time, but Suna's ready to strike. Burrow charges and forces the members of Space Station Gaming back.
So there's, oh man, there's going to be a brush talk on it. Big impact in a bad spot here. The chase is going to be real. Tiger JK trying to get the punches out, but it costs him his own life. B-Kid throwing out the damage there. The Dot over time really wreaking havoc on the side of Space Station Gaming. They have to second guess themselves. Passive proc for Equinox. Throws out the Stormbolt. Nice double stun. Casanova with that Swift Strike. And New Baraka is stuck in a corner, but nobody's able to get the trap there because B-Kid's pressure is just too high with that Abathur hat. Yeah, and the Abathur hat has been throwing out all the stabs and the spike bursts and losing the support for the damage dealer of Greymane and still having Carapace as a way of trying to negate some of the damage that Lag Force has let them push back Space Station, but now with Tiger JK back, they're once again going to go after this altar. It's so important to them because of the Abathur that they're able to get it. This time diving on top of B-Kid. He lives. Makes it out. He ends up making it out. Now Tiger JK caught out a bit too far. Lag F here is 5-1 in kills with an Abathur composition. They're going to be ahead when it comes to shots on the core now with these 4 shots raining on over to Space Station Gaming's core. And this now is where does Space Station Gaming recover from this game? With the early game being that poor and B-Kid wreaking that much havoc already on the Malthael? Well, they have a double reset composition, and especially once they can get Dragon Blade, then they have this volatility of team fights that, again, I mean, as long as they can get away from the heroic abilities like you mentioned, there's always a possibility that they can get a team fight that is so favored for them that at least they'll be able to take away some of the bell towers, but the bell towers they can't just whittle at now because they're level 7, Lag F has a mule. Space Station Gaming also needs to be a bit more patient or at least concerned about when they're going in with their mobility spells. Specifically, Equinox on the Muradin with his Dwarf Tosses. It's about the 4th or 5th one it feels like at this point already in this game alone, where it's been with a little bit lack of regard to where his team is comparative to his opponents, but then also Tiger there into the last game, and it's been a reoccurring theme. This isn't the first time we've seen this out of Tiger JK, specifically game number 1 on the Rhaegar. There was so many opportunities for Zuna to be able to punish his positioning, and a large reason maybe why they ended up winning that first game. Space Station is down in the game, and they were feeling the pressure over that bottom altar. They know that they should be winning over Lag F because of the Abathur composition, but yet they're the ones who are getting aggressed upon. Again, Lag F not afraid to go for ganks, for team fights, even though they're the Abathur team and they're pre-10. And that feels like it's a bit of a communication problem, especially if Tiger goes out too far to get caught here. He looks like he's going to be okay, and Genji transitioning downward. I mean, but let's be honest here. Even this skirmish we were witnessing play on bottom, that wasn't necessarily a team that looks like they're totally on the same page. The Tiger JK goes in, takes a bit too much damage, and he has to retreat. Suddenly Genji's there. It has to be in unison, working together if they're going to be successful. And it just leads to 4 more shots now going on to Space Station Gaming's core. Malthael still being a problem, but the biggest tale here is the experience in the Abathur.
Abathur just about to get Lagaf level 10 for heroic abilities. And that is where things get very scary for the team fights for Space Station Gaming. Space Station don't have something like a Gust as a disengage. They are all in for the team fights when they go in. And speaking of all in, Dahaka is coming. All 5 here. Zuna burrow charges away. Jason wants to go for the catch, but drags in a Beetle instead. At least Space Station are able to get their sappers, but Lagaf gets 10.
Yeah, this is really interesting decision-making coming out from Lag Force, knowing that they were so close to the 10. They could have risked that stall out all in with the 10 afterwards, but they decide that they were going to play a bit safer, which with how successful they've been in all forms of aggression, like this on top, Jason is going to get bodied.
Holy moly!
There's no way on out. This is just Lag Force just dominating every angle of this game, and Space Station isn't doing anything to try and change what's happening.
Dread B-Kid just did that with an Abathur hat. Yeah, but he didn't have Touch of Death to stop the self-heal of Dahaka. Now they're diving underneath the bell tower. They bring down Muradin because they know they can punish Space Station for fighting without the heroic abilities. Equinox wasn't able to hit Avatar yet. Now heroics are online for Space Station, but the damage has already been done. Lag Force takes out a bell tower. They're ahead 8 kills to 1.
Space Station Gaming's got to figure something out here. Maybe bottom is going to be the answer. Big Impact still has the hat. Jason with the mobility. Can he get the drag? He does end up getting it, and the Li Ming damage over the wall is enough to seal the deal. 24 seconds, and we've got ourselves the third altar phase of the game. But with Lag Force being a full level ahead, the biggest thing to note here is that Space Station Gaming doesn't have to be concerned about the 13 talent tier. They aren't worried about it too much. This is going to be one of the better fights for them to be able to take, especially knowing that Greymane's not going to be around for a bit longer.
But Lag Force got the sappers up on the top, but they already had the bell tower. The longer that they're able to keep Space Station here in the bottom lane and not stopping those, and even Dahaka is down here because he was there earlier to get the kill. Jason picks up one of the altars. It is at 3 shots. B-Kid taken out from Casanova.
And that was a beautiful collapse there from Space Station Gaming getting the punishment. But look at the clone getting so much damage onto the backlines. iDream already finds himself 1 kill. Tiger JK and Casanova are on an absolute full retreat, dropping the self-palm. It's not going to land. And look at that perfect timing. Lag Force find themselves another kill, but they're not done.
Excellent clone timing to make sure that the team could still have a Malthael even as he was brought down at the beginning of that fight. Lag Force getting the best of the fight once again, only losing their Malthael and taking out 3. And they saved one of the altars. They only lost the 3 shots from bot. 25. Make that 20 against 33 for Lagaf.
That was 5 versus 4. It's still boggling my mind. Like, that was 5 versus 4. They opened, I don't know exactly how many resources, and maybe it was too much of a commitment of resources to make sure they killed B-Kid there on the Malthael. But whatever happened, the fact that that was 4 versus 5, 1 for Lag Force, and they are just now hitting the threshold where I say their comp is something I'm afraid of. That is something we need to be concerned about, be playing around heavily, and that with the dominance they put out so far, this is just now, what does Space Station do to turn this around? And I don't have a solution. I've been looking for it for the past 9 minutes of the game.
You know, frankly, we've talked about the Space Station boot camp, but it's Lagaf who seems like a completely different team this series. I am amazed. I don't know what happened. They ate their Wheaties.
It just is ridiculous what they're managing to make happen here. Jason finding himself in an inconvenient 1v1 for what feels like the 5th time this game, and Dahaka is not wanting to deal with that.
Basically, nobody wants to deal with that if you're a melee up against Malthael, because he wreaks havoc on you, and again, that's without Touch of Death. So at least he gets the most out of his self-healing, his essence, his adaptation that he took. But the problem remains that Space Station cannot take their bell tower back. The Mule has kept it healthy. They do have some poke, but they haven't really been devoted to that just yet. Now they're maybe trying to get a kill on B-Kid, but iDream uses the clone and pushes back Superstars. Space Station.
The one thing here is you can see a bit of the panic from Space Station Gaming. They realize that there are not going to be too many fights where they want to force, and it's not going to be if we don't get this, we lose the game situation. That was one of them. Once the 16 thresholds hit here for Lag Force, it's going to be very likely that that is the case. And Space Station Gaming needs to be successful here. They cannot let this go through, because if Lag Force keeps up what they've managed to make happen in the first stages, this game's done.
3 people hit by Reaper's Mark as B-Kid hops in with the Tormented Souls. Jason channeling and will be able to get the altar before B-Kid gets there, but the damage on the members of Space Station is so incredibly much. B-Kid caught between a lot of the members, but Zuna and Tomster coming to his aid to help bail him out, and Tiger JK dashes to Talking Trees to safety.
B-Kid's literally just sitting there 1 versus 2. He is not afraid of anybody on the side of Space Station Gaming. If anything, it's just, can the members of Lag F keep up with the damage output that we see coming out from B-Kid here? He has done a phenomenal job spreading his mark, and more importantly, trading up into Space Station Gaming. That is something we often see Malthael struggle to do if they don't have a heroic. But he is always in a 2v1 and always drawing resources, not considering or threatening his own HP, and always threatening lethal on the other side.
Yeah, he built fairly sustainably too. Having Fear the Reaper makes you fear less going into those situations, because you can't be body blocked once you hit that. You get the movement speed and you can move through other units, so there's always the ability to get back, and the communication between B-Kid and Zuna has been on point. Whenever he needs help, he needs assistance from his warrior players, Zuna has the dive ability to jump in along with him and make sure that he can bail him out. And Tomster's there too. The communication from Lag F working out really well for them in this game. They've got the 16 advantage, and they're stealing away some sappers, trying once again to get back the bottom bell tower.
Interesting choice of 5-man commit to this on the bottom half of the map for Lag F. Not willing to consider baiting a 5 versus 4 trade, even though knowing the Dahaka on the other side. If you have this big talent to your advantage, sometimes you can feign an initiation, draw some kind of a resource, and then make something happen elsewhere. But they just kind of brute force this on out and then play it nice and safe here, secure themselves the bell tower up on the bottom half. 5 shots will be secured if they end up getting that altar before that bell tower is converted on back. But Space Station Gaming, they had the 16 window. Suddenly we're on even talent tiers. It's just, is it too little too late?
Well, either way, it was going to be beneficial for Lag F as long as they were making sure to keep track of where Dahaka could stalk in, because if they force him to stalk in, he's stalking in pre-16, and then there's the potential that they're able to get a fight pre-16. But if Dahaka doesn't stalk in, then Lag Force just takes the bell tower, and because they have Abathur with the mule, we saw how long it took Space Station to take that bottom bell tower back before. Now Dahaka's going to stalk in, though.
Yeah, he's going to stalk in. They need to make something happen. Zuna's going to be the drag target. They need a reset. Ancestral, though, connects. Tomster doing his best to keep the team alive, and now we find Equinox in a bad spot. Divine Palm going to use, not going to be procced. Cocoon is laying on the ground. Who's the victim we see inside of that one? Is that a Dahaka? No, it's a Karazim. I saw the Dahaka. I don't know why I thought that was the case. Either way, Heroics traded, and in the end, Dragon Blade's the only thing that stands.
That is unfortunate for Lag Force. There's a triple altar phase, but they are in the retreat position. And as long as they can keep the members here, Casanova is incredibly low. Genji's already taken out. Biggie goes in. He goes down too. There are bloodbath blowing up on either side. But Abathur hasn't stepped in and tried to take one of the belt or one of the altars just yet.
And look at this. This is just the Abathur hat with the members of Lag F ruining here. This is going to be 15 shots, and more importantly, the game. Lag Force finds a situation where they're going to take a lead in this series over Space Station Gaming. And it's not where we are that is surprising. It is how we got here, Gilly.
I'm just so surprised. All their heroic abilities were down.
I'm just going to flat out say it. Space Station Gaming has not won a single team fight this entire series so far. Like, no matter how big their advantage has been, they haven't won a single one. Think about when they have looked the best. Like, even on BOE. Like, when they were winning that game, they were winning it through the objective, never through a team fight. They lost every team fight they ended up taking. Dragonshire, 10-minute game. It's a map where we never got a full 5-on-5. That whole game, they lost every single team fight. they have to find whatever's going on, the miscommunication. Mainly, you can't give Zuna a mobile warrior with a Abathur hat and just ignore your backline. That keeps happening 3 times where it's just like 1 versus 3, and New Brack's just like, yeah, I'll take this trade all day, boys. Let's make it happen. B-Kid on the Mouthdale was able to make a double threat, which made that game infinite more difficult for the members of Space Station Gaming. But there is a huge problem in the teamfight of Space Station Gaming outside of maybe the one time where there's no miscommunication with that barrel roll gust after the Horrify. Did they look like they were as a unit in a fight? And until they recover that, I don't know a way where they're going to be able to pull this back.
We didn't even get to talk about their role swap.
No, I didn't touch up on that. And what that means for the mentality. I mean, if you want to give your angle on that, I'm ready for it.
Well, we've never seen, since Casanova gave up his position of melee to Equinox, to bring Equinox on the team, we have never seen him switch off of the warrior role. And yet in this, with the Genji, and I don't know, I would have to check. I don't know if we've seen Equinox play Genji before, and maybe it was just a situation of who could play what better. But it is strange to see now Casanova move back off of the warrior, even for one game. Because for him to be on that, like, that's a huge change in comfort for both of these players. Equinox, last time we played main warrior for Gale Force, and it didn't go that well.
It's not the first time we've seen this from a team in North America either. Even conveniently on the other side of the table, a team that has had equal level of role swappings happening, and it almost always comes down to the same individuals with the same roles back and forth. Because when you make the change and things don't go as planned, the easiest thing to do is scapegoat that change. That is the last time that wasn't that case, you were doing better, right? So every time we see teams going back to that exact thought process, going, this is the area where we need to change it, they go for the change, and in the end, it's not enough to be able to make it work. You panic, restore back to normal. And then even though you can accept that it is not going to work in its original state, that feeling and the amount of pressure these guys feel, it is so easy to just be like, you know what, I'm out. Like just go back to the original change. It's easier because those constants are the only way to grow it competitively. I feel like a lot of people struggle to understand to get better at a competitive level, you need to be able to rely on certain variables that always exist. And if you can't do that, how do you expect to get better? You have no baseline. So where in the hell is going to be, a 100% version of your squad? And it feels like we're struggling to identify what is the baseline and how to build off that. And when things don't work, throw it all away. Just go back to what you started with.
Well, LogForce is one game away from being able to take this series. Let's check out a tweet while we get ready for game number 4, potentially the last game of this best of 5. From Joshua Behrens. Yes, some Garrosh play. Didn't catch all of today's drafts, but most I saw had him banned out. We've had now 1 game where he's played in North America, 1 game in Europe.
He got 2 games worth of draft involvement, but I believe only one game where he got played in the EU scene. Yeah, no. He's been, I think, a little bit more than I'd have expected the impact of him so far. I did think we would see a here and there case, which it still is, and it's not like it's been all the teams are willing to be able to pick it up. But I did think he would be slower to be integrated. Everybody would kind of be like, he is hyped, but he's overhyped because he's too easy to punish. And then later, once people get really good with the hook, kind of like the Medivh factor, right? He comes out, he's amazing. You just don't know how good the team working with it, how that works out, and then he'd be more popular. But he's done pretty good for a week number 1 out the gates.
Yeah, being able to work together with a team with that combo it's a new one. Like, the idea that you can throw to a targeted location is, obviously it's different, right, from a Diablo where you know where it's going to be because it's always right behind him. But you then get to choose who you're going to throw. But in this instance, you don't get to choose that, so you have to be watching for when the right target does have that mark, and then getting to put them in where the communication has to be there with the team in a different way. And for some of these teams, they haven't had as much time to get practice in because they were at the Western Clash. But I thought we would see a little bit more from him, or of him, than we have so far, at least in our series.
Yeah, for North America especially, too, I can see maybe being a bit more popular of a trend than some of the other regions. Out of EU, we saw a lot more Toronto than I expected. Considering what we saw out of their drafts today, I believe we even got multiple Toronto games. And so the fact that she's becoming more and more popular has been pretty surprising. But other than that, with this week specifically, and EU and NA, I haven't seen anything too wild. A lack of double support, which I've considered to be surprising. We know that it's going to be nerfed, but it directly isn't nerfed in this patch, which, again, is kind of that weird